Yo, what's good everyone? Today I'm going to be taking a first look here at this Week 8 NFL DraftKings main slate. Let's dive right into it. And like I always do here in these videos, I'm going to go position by position, highlighting the plays that are sticking out to me early in the week, and then we'll wrap up the video by putting together a first look cash lineup and a first look tournament lineup. With that being said, let's dive into the quarterbacks here, and I got 3 tournament quarterbacks and 1 cash game quarterback sticking out to me here early in the week. Obviously, we got some big names at the top here: Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, who is considered week to week right now with that rib injury. Not entirely sure he is going to play. The first guy that I want to highlight here, though, is Jordan Love. This is truly a fantastic matchup, whether it be at home or on the road against this Jaguars secondary. They can't stop the pass. They have enough wide receiver talent on this offense for the Green Bay Packers to where Love could have himself a 4-5x day at that price of $7,100. So I love him in tournaments at that price. Just don't know if I'm going to go there in cash. He's been a little bit, I don't want to say boom bust, but he hasn't quite met that 3x value on a consistent basis that we're looking for out of our cash game quarterback. But love the upside there for tournaments. Another guy that I like in tournaments this week is, yes, Tua. Expected to be back at practice here. Love the matchup against Arizona. Obviously, we don't know for sure if he's going to play this Sunday, but all signs are kind of pointing to that. And at the price tag here, $6,100, we're essentially getting him at a $1,000 discount from where he was at in week 1 against those Jacksonville Jaguars. So I like him at that price as well. Maybe we'll build a little tournament lineup with him at the end of this video. I also wanted to highlight Caleb Williams here. Good matchup against that Washington secondary. Part of me wants Jaden Daniels to play in this game just so we can have that rookie matchup against one another. Also, part of me wants to roster the Bears defense, which I'll talk about later, and I would really hope that Jaden Daniels doesn't play considering that, and we get Marcus Mariota. So I'll dive into that a little bit later here. But Caleb is just getting better by the week, throwing the ball better, just looks more confident. And at $6,000 there, we need 18 DraftKings points for him to hit 3x value. I like him in tournaments, and we might be able to consider him in cash as well. And then the one cash game quarterback that really stuck out to me here was Geno Smith, because DraftKings is just not pricing him up, and he is consistently hitting that 3x value at that price of $5,900. A little tougher matchup there against Buffalo, I suppose, but that defense hasn't been super elite either, so I do like him at that price tag there at $5,900, especially playing at home. Now, moving on to the running backs here, and I never want to discount Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry, but honestly, I really like Kenneth Walker as kind of my top play here in tournaments this week against that Buffalo run defense, which has not been good this year. Walker has been surprisingly heavily involved in the passing game. That's not something we've seen in the past from him. I'd love the rushing attempts to go up, to be honest. That's where he's really thrived in the past, but considering his involvement in the passing game right now and what he's doing in terms of DraftKings points, I think we need to consider him in tournaments this week. I also really like Joe Mixon. I think we can play him in cash as well, even though his price continues to go up here. In his 3 full healthy games this year, 29.8, 30.2, 29.4 DraftKings points. He had 30 and 25 rushing attempts in 2 of those games. And again, someone who's involved in the passing game. Plus, I love that matchup there against the Indianapolis Colts. But honestly, everyone, I love the 6K range this week for running backs. I think there's a ton of plays in this range that we can play in both cash games and tournaments. First being Kareem Hunt here. He has clearly taken over as the number 1 running back in Kansas City. 27 and 22 rushing attempts in his last 2 games. I'd like him to be a little more involved in the passing game, but overall, this is an offense that can put up points. I know they've degressed or kind of fallen back a little bit this year, maybe not meeting the Kansas City Chiefs expectations, but he's going to get a lot of volume, and I like him at that price of $6,300, especially considering the matchup there against those Raiders. If Travis Etienne does not play this week, Tank Bigsby looks really good here at $6,300. 26 rushing attempts last week. Hard to ignore that volume, but it sounds like Etienne could be back, so we need to keep an eye on that. DeAndre Swift is really taken over as the number 1 back in Chicago here. You can see consistent rushing attempts, and I love his involvement in the passing game as well. 29.5, 20, and 21.9 DraftKings points in his last 3 games, hitting 4x value at that price of $6,200. And again, I don't mind that matchup against Washington. And then assuming that Tua is going to be back for the Miami Dolphins this week, Devon Achane there at $6,200. Maybe we don't go there in cash, but man, is this a great tournament play in my opinion. He could easily hit 4 or 5x value at that price. We saw him do it a handful of times last year. Such an explosive player. And then the last guy that I want to highlight here, especially considering the matchup, and he played really well last week, is Javonte Williams of the Denver Broncos. Now again, you're looking at the volume here, maybe not the most consistent in the running game, but I do love his involvement there in the passing game, and again, played really well last week against New Orleans. This is probably the best matchup he's going to see all year against that Carolina run defense. Now folks, before we dive into the wide receiver plays here, if you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate that. It's completely free to do, and I'm going to have football content coming out for you guys throughout the remainder of the season. And I love the wide receiver position this week. I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys that I have jotted down on my notes right now, so we won't go through each of those individually, kind of give them a high-level overview, but we'll start at the top here with A.J. Brown. When he's in the lineup, he is getting the ball thrown his way. Big play, explosive play upside, and you can just see the DraftKings numbers there. 20, 26.6, 25.9. More of a tournament-only play for me just because the volume isn't always super consistent, but I think we have to be talking about him in tournaments. Scrolling down just a little bit off of that, I know Drake London wasn't great in the first half last week, but really showed up in that second half. And again, I'm looking at the volume here, super consistent. You can look at the DraftKings numbers there as well. Sure, his price is going up, but for all the right reasons. He's clearly the #1 wide receiver in that Atlanta offense, and I don't mind that matchup this week against Tampa Bay. Let's talk about Tyreek Hill, though. Just like Devon Achane, if Tua is back this week, this is probably the cheapest we're going to see Tyreek all year with Tua in the lineup, $7,000. I think we can talk about him in cash and in tournaments. And then scrolling down just a little bit off of that, Jaden Reed here, we can easily stack him up with Jordan Love. I think we could go with Dobbs there as well. Again, that secondary for the Jags is just one of the worst in the NFL. Again, we can't consider him in cash because the volume just isn't there, but he brings that 30-plus DraftKings point upside that we're looking for in our tournament lineups. Sticking in this 6K range here, though, we're going to go to T. Higgins next at $6,500. Again, maybe can't go there in cash, and honestly, I'm looking at the volume right now and saying, okay, maybe I do have that wrong, but ultimately, I like him at this price of $6,500. He's actually seeing more volume over Jamar Chase, so yeah, maybe we'll consider that in cash. Again, make sure you stay tuned for the 2 videos that I drop later this week where I break those down even further. Scrolling down a little bit off of that, Amari Cooper, I think we have to start talking about him being in this new offense for the Buffalo Bills. Scored a touchdown last week, and actually, if you go back and watch the play, Josh Allen called an audible at the line of scrimmage, and Amari Cooper looks over at Keon Coleman and is like, what the hell am I supposed to run here? And Keon Coleman's just like, run straight. Obviously scored a touchdown on that play, really cool to see, but at $6,000, again, if I'm shooting for 4 or 5x value in my tournament lineups, Amari Cooper could definitely do that. But let's get into some of the value plays here now. We're going to scroll down into the 4K range, and I think we can go with Allen Lazard in our cash lineups. I mean, if we look at the volume there for a guy priced in the 4K range and how that's translating to DraftKings points, I mean, that's some of the best value we're going to see here for the wide receiver position, so he's definitely in play. And then I also wanted to mention Rashad Bateman. I think we can maybe go there in cash. You're looking at the volume and going, 4 targets, not the best, but he just needs one big play to kind of meet value. We saw that last night, actually, against Tampa Bay. Love him in tournaments, maybe a cash game consideration, but at $4,300, another value play to me. And then we got the tight ends here, and usually I just have 1 or 2 guys on my notes here when it comes to the tight end position, but this might be my favorite slate so far this year when it comes to the tight ends. I got a handful on my notes right now. We won't spend too much time on this. I'll name drop the guys that I like, though. I do want to highlight Brock Bowers, though. He's seen double-digit targets in 3 straight games, which has led to just awesome DraftKings performances. He's basically the wide receiver 1 in that offense right now, so he's definitely in play. Njoku saw 14 targets last week. I don't love the price tag there at $5,100, but I do love that volume. I think Cole Kmet can be in play here this week as well in that matchup against the Commanders. Again, I do like Caleb Williams this week at $6,000. I think Kyle Pitts is in play, but one of my favorite cash game plays here is Hunter Henry. Seen 5 and 9 targets with Drake May under center, 13 and 17.2 DraftKings points. We love that considering the price there at $3,800. But I also want to name drop Noah Fant and Jonnu Smith. I think both those guys could be in consideration in the 3K range, as well as Cade Otton. Obviously, just horrible news with Chris Godwin. Sounds like he might miss the rest of the season. I didn't see the injury last night, but I just heard it wasn't good. Mike Evans, I think he will be back. It sounds like a hamstring injury, but I doubt he plays this week, which means Cade Otton could legitimately be the #1 pass catcher for the Bucs until Mike Evans gets back. 10 targets last night, 21 DraftKings points. $3,500, that's definitely a cash game consideration. And then if Tommy Tremble misses again this week for the Carolina Panthers, I think we can go back to Sanders as well. 5, 7, and 6 targets now in his last 3 games. And then wrapping up the positional plays here with the defenses, got 2 that are sticking out to me. One on the tournament side, that's the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Cleveland Browns. I don't care who the quarterback is for the Browns, love that matchup, but it could very well be Jameis Winston. We all know that he's not afraid to turn the ball over. And then again, assuming that Marcus Mariota starts for the Washington Commanders this week, I love the Bears here at this price. DraftKings clearly priced them down, assuming that Jane Daniels was going to be starting. So again, we need to keep an eye on that. But assuming that it is Marcus Mariota starting, I really like the Bears here at 2,700. All right, now let's put together a first look cash lineup here, everyone. But before we do that, actually, just want to recommend everyone joining my Discord channel. It's completely free to do. We now have over 800 people in there talking multiple different sports when it comes to DFS. If you want to join that, there's a link to do so in the description below, as well as in the pinned comment below. With that being said, let's start off at the quarterback position here. I mentioned earlier, I like Geno Smith at this price of $5,900. DraftKings just refuses to price him up, and he's consistently hitting 3x value at that price. Like I mentioned when it comes to the running backs, I love the 6K range this week, but boy has Joe Mixon been good, so I want to start there, and then we can pivot later if we need to. And then we'll put in, let's go with Kareem Hunt here. Do like that matchup against the Raiders. Now at the wide receiver position this week, I'd also like to spend up for Tyreek Hill, assuming that Tua is back. And actually, let's go with Drake London there as well. What does that do? 3,900 left over per player. So we need to find some value here at the wide receiver position, and we can do that with Allen Lazard. And then at the tight end position, let's put in Hunter Henry at $3,800. All right, so that's $3,650 left over per player. We'll go ahead and put in the Bears, assuming it is Marcus Mariota who starts at the quarterback position. $4,600 left over for the flex. I don't necessarily love that. We could go with Rashad Bateman there, but let's try this. So we're going to pivot off of Mixon, and let's put in DeAndre Swift there. And then that gives us $6,100 left over, where we can put in Brock Bowers. Like I said, he's kind of a wide receiver 1 right now for that Raiders offense. So for a first look cash lineup, I don't mind that. Now let's go ahead and put together a first look tournament lineup. Mentioned Tua in that Miami Dolphins offense quite a bit, so let's just assume he's going to play here this week and build a lineup around that. We'll go with Tua here, and let's stack him up with both Achane, that's just so affordable there at $6,200, and Tyreek Hill. And then we'll run it back with an Arizona player. Let's go with James Conner. All right, so $4,800 left over per player. Let's put in Jaden Reed. I really do love that matchup there against the Jags. And then let's put in Bateman. I put in Lazard earlier in the cash lineup, so go with Bateman here on the tournament side of things. Tight end position, let's put in Cade Otton. Save a little cash there as well. And then we'll go with the defense here too. Let's put in the Ravens, see if we can make this work. All right, so that's $6,300 left over. There's a handful of guys that we could go with. Kareem, Bigsby. You could go DeAndre Swift again. But let's go Javonte here in a beautiful matchup against that Carolina run defense. All right, everyone, that is going to wrap up this video here for today. As always, thank you all for taking the time out of your day to watch the content here on this channel. If you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate that.